JiggyJaguarMountain.com. Tune in, iTunes, and of course you can find us each and every day over there at JiggyJaguar.com. 50-plus AM FM stations across the country and around the world, and of course iHeartRadio as well. And we have got a great guest with us today here on our big broadcast. I am unusually excited to be talking to a great guest with us today. Rory Ross is with us. He joins us here on our big broadcast, and Rory is from Disney Plus's The Book of Boba Fett. He's also going to be in the new Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus series as well. But let's start, Rory, with your with a little bit on your background. You grew up in, what was it, Arkansas?
Well, I was born in Arkansas.
Okay.
But I grew up in Iowa, in a very small town called Lockridge, Iowa. I think there was about 100 people, so it's pretty small.
You know, I have been through. I've been to Spencer, Iowa. That is the only and it's a tiny place, and pretty much every town in Iowa is tiny. I noticed driving through Iowa, you would see nothing for miles, and then all of a sudden this town pops up. And it's tiny. Yep. There's nobody there, hardly. And then you move on down the road, and it's more tininess. Did you, growing up in Iowa, did you notice that about Iowa's just small?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a reason why they call it a drive-through state. It's kind of all the same. But I will say, you know, I don't want to speak down on Iowa. It was a really cool place to grow up. I had a kind of unusual childhood in that I grew up in the southeast part of Iowa, so a lot of people, I think, they picture Iowa as very flat. I had some hills, you know, they were about 10 feet tall, so I consider that a hill. That was pretty nice. We had some river property, but what was crazy for me is I grew up on a farm, and so we actually had, you know, Texas Longhorns, we had American quarter horses, we had emus, ostriches, and even at one point we had 2 African lion cubs, as well as a pet store. We had piranhas, 8-foot-ball pythons, parakeets, parrots, all this kind of stuff. So it was a very kind of almost growing up on a zoo. So I don't think it was a typical Iowa childhood, but very kind of secluded in an area, because when it came to Halloween, I don't think I ever did trick or treat, because otherwise you'd have to walk 3 miles to go to the neighbor's house.
Yes. So, okay, you end up eventually going out to, what was it, Seattle? Is that
Correct.
Where you ended up?
Yeah.
So why make the jump from Iowa to Seattle? That is a hell of a culture shock.
It was. It really was. Again, like I said, with the mountains I knew of, we're about 10 feet tall, and seeing Mount Rainier and the Rocky Mountains, that was awe-inspiring to just look upon and be like, wow, this is what you call a mountain. This is cool. And then it was very much a culture shock of going from 100 people to like over 1 million. But the reason for me, in terms of why I left, it sort of kind of is like Luke's story, where Luke and Uncle Owen, they don't necessarily see eye to eye. And for me, my dad and I, we definitely didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. And so I ended up leaving at age 13 to sort of basically start a new life. I went to Seattle and went to an academy, and I actually ended up paying $10,000 for my freshman and sophomore year each, and then $12,000 for junior and senior year. So while everyone else was having fun and experiencing high school and the public atmosphere, I was working 2 different jobs, and then also doing scholarships and community service to make that all happen.
That's pretty badass. We have got Rory Ross with us today. He joins us here on our big program, and we are also live on KFRK in Denver as well. A fantastic interview today with Rory Ross. He is part of the Book of Boba Fett. He is also going to be part of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series as well on Disney Plus. So you end up in Seattle. What got you interested in acting and getting some of the different spots that you've gotten?
Yeah, well, so I think we have to go back just a little bit, because when I was 6 years old, living in Iowa, I contracted a rare fungus that was essentially causing my scalp to fall off.
Wow.
And it was during this really traumatic event and going to the hospital. I went to Iowa City Children's Hospital, and I remember it was like a hazmat crew that came out and got me, and they had to go through this decontamination process. It was really crazy, and I remember getting an IV for the first time, and they actually missed. And so it was kind of like, it was just really traumatic for myself, my mom, and all this stuff happening. And I just remember that first day, my mom went to the media library inside the hospital and brought Star Wars: A New Hope. It was the first time I've ever seen Star Wars.
Awesome.
And seeing Luke's journey and how he was able to overcome insurmountable obstacles, it gave me the hope that I needed that I was going to be okay. And at the time, I was in the pediatric ward. There were some kids that were, going through different things, but there were some that got better, and then there were some that was it.
Yeah.
And so I just remember when I left, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing for my life, whatever it is. I want to bring hope and inspiration to people like Luke did for me. And so that's always been a very big thing for me. And as I went on and, like I said, left at 13 and kind of like Luke decided to go and do a new journey, that's something that's permeated. And I've continued to do community service and try to find ways of giving back to the world, especially the communities that I'm in. And then when I was in Seattle after high school, I went to Walla Walla, Washington, and did college there.
That's awesome. You actually ended up in Walla Walla, Washington.
Walla Walla, yeah.
That's badass.
It was fun. It was interesting, I didn't really get to explore or taste the wine, unfortunately, until I graduated because of the kind of atmosphere I was in. But it was a cool place, and seeing Palouse Falls. But when I was there, it was like my junior or senior year. I did this play called A Time of Green, and in that, I play a chicken named Picard, and I am on stage and I go, Picard, and I lay an egg. And that was like my big little moment there. And so that was sort of the beginning of my acting journey. And then I left from Walla Walla and went to Seattle and got to do some indie films and Seven Witches. And then found my way here in LA. I came to LA rocking my Seahawks jersey, doing first class so I could get cheap luggage option off of Alaska Airlines. And then I had $200 in my pocket. So when I came, I didn't really have necessarily a big plan or maybe as planned out as I should have. And I couch surfed for, I would say, 4 to 6 months. And then just found my way getting on set here with like Westworld. And then I became Lee Harvey Oswald on the History Channel with JFK Declassified. Did Chris McCandless for Off the Map Travel Channel. Went off to Alaska and South Dakota and some of these other places that Chris McCandless actually traveled. And then did the Linkin Park music video, Heavy. I was Chester Bennington's stunt and body double. So those were all some really great things. And then it was last year where all of a sudden I ended up on Star Wars and my life changed forever.
Well, I want to go back here and talk about the opportunities that you had to get to this point. You mentioned the music video and some of the other things that you were involved in. Did you have to hire an agent, or did you find somebody that knew somebody? How the hell did you end up with some of this stuff, brother? I
mean, it's crazy to think. All of that was through direct submission. So it was just me hustling, and that's still me today. I try to find things that I can do. I was very fortunate that I was able to. I've always had a passion for tech, and so for a long time I was working for Oculus and was traveling around the world showing off the virtual reality systems. And so between acting and that's really all I had. And I did really great with that job. And so it helped me continue persisting and enduring all the constant no's that you get here in LA. And then, with the Chris McCandless, that was an interesting one because all my work prior to that, it was all villain. And so I remember they're like, Chris is like a very hopeful, adventurous guy. How do we know this is you? And so I had to show him. I was like, my actual personality is that person, but all the stuff I played, it was very dark and gloomy. And so it was a funny process to go through that. And then even with Linkin Park, I remember originally I didn't get it, and I talked to my mom, and she was like, hey, things can still happen. And it was funny. The very next day, they called me, and I guess the guy that originally was going to do it, he wouldn't shave his head and go bald like Chester. So I was like, you know what? Look, I've come this far. I'm going to go all the way. And so I shaved my head completely and rocked like these fake earrings and all this stuff to do it. It was a lot of fun.
I'm just amazed at the way some people, I guess, go through the world. I'm just amazed that you're given the opportunity to be, in a music video, make some cash. There's probably going to be, more opportunities, and this guy lets us stop from shaving his head. I'm just amazed at all the way things happen in life, but that's pretty badass. He didn't want to shave his head. You're in, baby.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, that's sort of the same thing that happened with Book of Boba Fett. The original person that was fitted for the costume, Greg Cufero, who was a buddy of mine, they had shot things out of order, so that's why the train scene and then the robing scene, which are really awesome scenes. He's the one that is actually the character because the costume, the outfit was originally made for him. But what happened is when production shut down due to COVID, and they came back later on in 21, he wasn't able to do it, and that's what opened the door for me. And so it was. I mean, obviously, it sucks for him because that was a character that he really and still does kind of imprint himself on, and he looks at it as his. And then for me, just to be able to sort of put my own spin a little bit on that character in those scenes, and to try to put my stamp on it was really cool, and it's been amazing to see how the fans have reacted, and then also for me, for my full Star Wars story to kind of come full circle.
Well, and that's something else. We have got a great guest with us today. He joins us live here on our big broadcast. Rory Ross is with us. He's from Disney Plus's The Book of Boba Fett, and he is a fantastic actor, and he joins us today here on our broadcast. The Book of Boba Fett is the Star Wars series chronicling the adventures of the legendary bounty hunter. It's now showing on Disney Plus. It is amazing, and you mentioned something there that I think a lot of studios and a lot of TV series and this is what they're doing anymore. They're shooting things out of order. Is that basically to prevent somebody from running their mouth? Is that pretty much what it comes down to, or is it production cost, or it's a little bit easier to do all of this stuff in a certain order and then piece it together later, or
right? I think it's sometimes there's kind of a list of reasons. I obviously in this particular case, in terms of shooting in order, it's probably because of scheduling. It's a really hard, making sure Tim is doing some great stuff, Ming-Na Wen is doing some great stuff. So I think it's sometimes difficult to try to align those schedules and make sure that everyone's available for those things. And then also the set pieces and different things. Sometimes it's just how it works. So either way, I'm very thankful for this, and to have that opportunity was just simply amazing.
Well, I think it's pretty badass, and this show is amazing. When exactly do you get to see the finished product? Do you see it when everybody else sees it, or do you guys have like a screening, or how does this work since it's on a streaming service and not an actual movie?
Yeah, well, I think obviously things are a little different because of COVID too. There's not. I remember just as right before Book of Boba Fett came out, I had a friend who was working on The Matrix, and they were going to do a screening party. They ended up doing it, but there was another one that got canceled right at the last minute. So it's been really interesting here in LA. Like, you're not getting as many social events as would happen. With me, I'm not as a central character in the sense of I'm a top build cast or anything like that. So I wouldn't get usually the ability to see it beforehand. When you're on set sometimes, and there was one particular scene that was cut out, unfortunately, where it was the train scene and they have two people firing. I got to see a previs, which is just like the digital version of what that's supposed to look like without the actual actors. And it was supposed to be me running across, kind of giving assistance. But I remember when I went over there, they said, "We want you to run as fast as you can." And I was like, okay, I did the little track, so let's go. And I think I just surprised them because I took off real fast. This is my moment. And I remember they were like, "Oh, nope, okay, you got to go back. You got to slow it down. You're a Tusken Raider. You're full of all this gear. You're going over there." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going over there, but I'm supposed to be taking out this person, right? So I need to, it's urgent." So it was fun. It was good times. So sometimes you'll see the previs, but typically if you're in a minor role, you won't see the sort of Robert Downey Jr. treatment where you get to see all the whole movie before everyone else does.
Now, another project that you're involved in is you're going to be in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Right.
And this series, I will have to say, this is the most secretive damn thing that the Disney Star Wars folks, they released a trailer and a bunch of different things, and then it went dead, baby. They the internet. I'll dial up these YouTube guys, and they are just there are people that are literally piecing together news from nothing just to be able to have content for their YouTube channels. And I just find this amazing. Is it one of those things where the reason why they've been so secretive and everything is because they've had to piece this together because of the shooting schedule with COVID and all these things? Or from the actor's perspective, why do you think they've been so secretive? Whereas with the Boba Fett show, they put a trailer out there, they've done all these things, and all of a sudden it's on Disney Plus. Whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi, there are still people trying to piece tea leaves together, brother, trying to figure out what the hell's going on here.
Yeah, well, you think about this. I mean, Kenobi is a character that we have really fell in love with. Yeah, he's right there in the original, and then Ewan McGregor nailed it in the prequels. And so you want to be very mindful and careful in spending as much time as possible to make sure that the visual effects and all that stuff looks great. Because if you release something a little too early, and fans are very tied to this character.
Oh my God!
They're gonna have something to say.
Yes.
So you want to be. You don't want any Game of Thrones moments where all of a sudden a water bottle is showing up out of anywhere and disconnects you from the universe. You want to make sure that you're taking as much time as possible.
Yeah.
And fans are gonna love Kenobi. I will say that, but it's you gotta just make sure that you're doing it all right, and then also with Boba Fett out right now, you want to make sure the focus is on that. So I'm sure before too long there'll be more Kenobi footage or something.
So the shooting schedule. How did you end up with the Obi-Wan Kenobi? Did you get that before the Boba Fett series, or?
No, so Boba Fett was first. I shot that in February or into March, I think.
Yeah. And
then while I was on that, a buddy of mine, Warren Prue, he ended up being the stand-in for Kenobi himself, and he's already announced that. So that was really cool, and he kind of gave me a secret email to go ahead and say, hey, you were a stormtrooper in Mandalorian, but I wasn't. It was that kind of fake it till you make it sort of thing. So I was like, yeah. So I wrote that out, and next thing I knew, I got on Kenobi, and I shot that for a certain amount of time, and it was an amazing time. It was great fun. I'm excited for the fans to see that connective tissue between the prequels to the original sort of trilogy, and it's going to be a great show.
Well, I think the fact that all this stuff kind of flows together is what's making all this stuff work.
Yeah, you got some really great masterminds with John and Dave. They're very particular in making sure that things have that connective tissue and to make sure that you get that callbacks. Like if you look in episode 3 that just came out this week, there's a really cool scene where it's a painting that the swoop.
Yes, I noticed that. Yeah,
from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So and then even with the Tuskens, there's a particular scene where it shows the whole process of getting the gas stick.
Yep.
And that's a life from page from Roth McCory's drawings.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, you've done an amazing job on everything connected to all the different things besides the Star Wars stuff. What else do you have coming out? Do you have anything you're working on, or are you just Star Wars crazy right now?
I gotta be careful how I answer that, but I'll say that I just finished off an associate producer project called Unwavering.
That's cool.
It happens to do with the cultural ethnic studies back in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken.
That's cool.
So I'm really excited about that. And then my ultimate dream is to be a Jedi, hence the whole get up. And so it's all about manifesting, putting it out there. And since we saw Luke in Mandalorian season 2, which that was amazing, I never saw that coming of them bringing him back to live action.
Yeah.
my ultimate dream would be if they showed Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy before it got ransacked by Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren, then
That
I
would
would
be
love
really
to
cool,
be
yeah.
one of his students at his Jedi Academy. So that's something I'm working on, just stunt classes and things like that. And then a big thing that I have coming up is we've got a Tusken watch party that we're going to do. And it's gonna be,
That's
it's
awesome.
going to be myself and another buddy of mine and Warren Prue, who I mentioned earlier, the stand-in for Kenobi. And we're going to kind of go through behind the scenes and on-set stories and commentary and all that stuff. But what's really cool is that all the proceeds from that event, it's going to go to the Iowa City Children's Hospital, which is where my Star Wars story began all those years ago.
That's
way to
awesome.
pay it forward and give it back to the universe.
That's really cool. That is really cool that everything just kind of connects. I think I think that's pretty badass. I think that's really cool. So, an associate producer. How do you get that title?
I mean, well, with Unwavering, I was helping make sure that we got, because, well, one, with COVID, it's really made things difficult in terms of filming. So you have to make sure you do the pre-deployment testing. So Disney, they actually have their own testing site.
Wow.
So we get tested with PCR, and then all of a sudden within 30, 40 minutes, you've got the results. Most people don't have that advantage. You got 24 hours before the lab's going to process that. And so as an associate producer, I took it on upon myself to be the COVID compliance officer to make sure everyone was taken care of.
That's
awesome. So I had to make sure I got the testing and getting that all set up. But then also, I got my good buddy Kyle Sloan to come on and be a grip. He does a lot of the grip stuff here in LA with other shows. And he came out and worked with us. And then just making sure that we're putting money in to make sure that the crew is getting fed and the cast. And then I got to play a small role in it, which was really cool. So for me, it's not necessarily my story to tell. But it was just a cool part to be a part of that and to have that story come to life.
So one of the things that I noticed in the very the first season of and maybe even the second season of the Mandalorian series, they did a lot of these scenes. They built like these like green screen studios, and they shot a lot of that stuff that way. Did you guys do that with the Book of Boba Fett, or was it you guys were out in the middle of the damn desert somewhere?
So what you're referring to is what we call the volume.
Yes.
And that's really cool, right? It's the panoramic screen. So I'll say that I've seen it and been able to work on it, and that was really cool. Just because what's fascinating is where the camera is being pointing. That's it could be expanding the scene or expanding the environment or contracting it. Yep. But when you walk past that, it's disorienting because all of a sudden you go from sort of that little space of time, and then when you cross the frame, the camera is no longer there. So then all of a sudden it's disorienting to kind of walk out of that. But they do a really great job in understanding how light reflects off objects, and that's something George Lucas has been working on for years, and they've mastered that. It's amazing. It makes you feel like it's very real, and it's a physical thing. We had someone fall off at one point, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
So with Boba Fett, though, typically most of that I shot for that was all on location in a sense. So we
That's
had
pretty cool.
blue screen, but then it's real sand. It's outside in the desert sun of California, and you feel it. It is present. It's definitely there. So that was a lot of fun, but a little hard. It takes a lot of endurance to make sure that you're staying hydrated, and with all those layers of clothing, you're sweating. You smell pretty bad. And you really look forward to when that gust of wind comes in and kind of gives you a reinvigoration so you can stand for another day.
Well, I'll tell you, it is such a cool deal. And the only reason why I asked you about the shooting part of it is because I understand that you took part in the scene where the Tuskens made Boba a member of their tribe, and I didn't know if that was, because it looks hot. That scene looks hot. The whole thing looks like you guys are dying in those outfits.
Well, so I want to make sure that giving credit where credit's due for the robing, where Boba is actually being made a member and he's getting his own Tusken wrappings.
Yeah.
That is great, Kufera, that I mentioned
That's
earlier.
cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And so that was cool as a fan being able to see that, and it is the Tusken that we both shared, so that was really cool. For me, what was really awesome to be a part of was actually when he's coming back from his spiritual journey, because as fans, it's I think that Book of Boba Fett is all about the journey of Boba in the sense of how he breaks free of the idea of him trying to be his dad. You know, when we saw him in Geonosis, it's like all of a sudden he wants to be his father and he wants to avenge him, you know, from what Mace did. And so you see a little bit of that in Clone Wars. But what's fascinating with the Tuskens is the aspect of sort of seeing the life of Boba living through them. Because if you look at the Tusken kid, it's sort of like Boba, you know, very innocent, and it's right before everything happens on Geonosis. So that's why he spares him. He sort of sees himself. And then Joanna Bennett, who plays the Tusken warrior, she's a badass. She's fierce. And, you know, it's like Boba in his prime when we saw him in Empire Strikes Back. But even in Empire Strikes Back, Boba still obeys or listens to Vader. Vader says no disintegrations. And he has to basically say, okay, that's the way it goes. And then when you look at the chief, he's the one that Boba wants to be. It's the one that answers to nobody, but he's a leader. He takes care of his people or his flock in a sense. And so that was really cool to see that play out in the present time where Boba's like, I want to lead by respect, not by fear, compared to what Jabba and Bib Fortuna did. And then to see that whole scene where he goes on the spiritual journey and is wrestling with the tree. It's like wrestling with himself. He's trying to break free again from the expectations that have been placed on him or what he's put on himself is trying to be his dad. And then when he finally breaks free in the tumultuous water of Camino and then kind of also representing Tatooine when it was covered in water, it's his whole life and that struggle, that inner conflict. And then he releases, he gets out, and then he finally finds himself a member of the tribe. He finally finds family. And it's the first time really that he's ever had that experience, because if you look at Clone Wars, he's with bounty hunters, he's with Bossk, he's with Aurra Sing. And so now it's finally a family that says, we don't expect anything of you. All we want you to do is be present and be part of our community.
Well, and something else that I just doing some prep for this interview, I understand that you did a few you did a couple scenes with Tamura Morrison who plays Boba Fett. Tell me a little bit about the because I understand there was a scene or something of the stunt double was supposed to do something and got hurt.
I mean, he did get knocked out. I don't want to say that, but he I think he maybe did something to his leg. I can't remember exact injury or what it was. I don't think it was too serious, but enough where it was sort of like, hey, you know, whether or not he can complete it. And Tim was like, I'm going to do this. And Tim always showed up. You know, he's always just that fierce person, but he's not fierce in the sense of like how he reacts or interacts with you. He's very kind and generous, and you know, just a really cool guy. But it was cool to see him take that on. And even when, you know, typically actors, especially if they call them first team, that's when they come in and it's the ones that are really on camera. But typically their stand-in will be there to, you know, set up the camera and get the shot right and the lighting and all this. And Tim often would kind of be like, no, I'll do it. I'm not saying every time, but he definitely was kind of like, this is my character. This is who I am.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah. I think that's great. So, moving forward here, you've got, you know, all sorts of different things happening. When you get done with, for instance, doing the Book of Boba Fett, and then shooting for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and then doing some of the other things that you're involved in, is it one of those cases where you guys get all the shooting done on one show and then you move on to the next one and you might have maybe a month or two off? How does that work?
It's how do I answer this?
I don't want you to get in trouble for anything. I was just wondering because like I've been around people that have shot music videos or have shot like little TV shows and things. Nothing to the extent like you've done, but they try to get everything done as quick as humanly possible. You know, like with the music video guys, you know, they try to get everything shot within like a couple days. They can get that done. And looking at a production like this Book of Boba Fett, it looks like something that, my God, you want to get all those desert scenes shot immediately. And then you want to shoot all this other stuff later.
And that goes back with the whole scheduling thing that we were talking about earlier. You would want to do that for sure. So that you have that set piece and you're able to use it. But sometimes scheduling or maybe something that you need to add on later on isn't finished in terms of a set piece or whatever it might be. So it's difficult, right, in that regard. But it's I will say that Star Wars or Disney in general, especially because of COVID, they try to kind of keep the same people if they can, or if that you're available and stuff like that, because they already know how you are, how you behave on set, and so they want to make sure that they're continuing, almost nourishing that relationship and just making sure that that's their sort of way of giving back and saying, like, thank you so much for being a part of this and doing a great job, being on time and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and something else to follow up with that, I recently rewatched the I think it was the second Highlander movie, and one of the things that they say, one of the little trivia things about that is, I guess Sean Connery, he was only available for 3 days. And so they shot all his scenes in that movie in 3 days. And I got to thinking, if you have a TV series like with the Book of Boba Fett, and you've got all these people available, but also at the same time, like you were saying earlier, some people's schedules are not going to line up.
Right.
And that's why I was trying to figure out, because I'm like, man, you want to make sure you keep all the people in the spot, and you answered it there with Disney, where they want to try to make sure everybody's, they're loyal to everybody. So I think that's pretty cool, the way that that's put together.
Yeah, and again, that makes the most sense too with COVID, so that way that they're being smart about it and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And it's just easier in that regard. Also, then hopefully you can trust them in terms of secrets, so that you're
that too.
Because if you're bringing more people on,
the more people you got, the more people are going to run their mouths.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been very careful on that. I'm like, hey, I'm only saying what's out there. I said Kenobi about the Stormtrooper because when they released the concept art, there's Stormtroopers all over the place. So I was like, that's safe. But everything else, I'm sort of like, nah, I'm waiting for a trailer. Then we'll see what happens.
Well, you have done excellent. I love the fact we were able to talk to you today. And I guess before we let you go, how do people get in touch with you on social media if they've seen the show and they want to reach out to you or anything? How do people get in touch with you, my friend?
For sure. So they can reach me out on Instagram or Twitter. It's the Rory Ross. And borntobeajedi.com, that's where they can follow the updates, the stunt training that I'm doing. And yeah, you gotta manifest it. That's all.
Hey, I'll tell you, brother.
The coolest things I've gotten ever was this Christmas. My girlfriend and the guys, Daniel at Blue Box Designs, they made me an actual custom Jedi action figure, and it has a card back and everything. It has Kinder Toy on it. It's the coolest thing ever. But yeah, so you can catch me out on there, and we're trying to figure out autographs stuff. I've been reached out on that and just trying to figure out how to manage that. But I want to make sure that, just like the Tuscan Watch Party, any autographs or any guest appearances I do at a Comic-Con or something, that I'm having some of the money definitely go to Iowa City Children's Hospital forever, because I'm forever grateful.
That's awesome.
What happened and how that impacted my life.
That is fantastic. Well, Rory, you have been amazing. I would love to do this again when you have a spare moment. But thanks for spending as much time with us as you did, and have yourself a good weekend, sir. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much, and may the Force be with you.
Thank you, Rory. Appreciate it, brother. There he goes. That is Rory Ross. He joins us today here on a broadcast. And he is amazing. Just great stuff. We are going to take a timeout. And when we come back, we have got more coming up. It is